to this episode of Anderson Ad Break. I am your host, Sam.
And I'm Chelsea.
And Maddie. On today's episode, we're going to be interviewing our amazing coworker and social media manager, Sam Bureau. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks.
So you might have seen her on the podcast before, but today we're going to go a little bit more in depth about what she does here at Anderson and why she's so great.
Yeah, so to start off, we're going to be doing our rapid fire questions. So Sam, are you ready?
I am ready.
Are you sure?
I think so.
Okay.
I hope so.
Okay, we'll find out. All right, so what was the first social media app or platform that you used?
MySpace. That's where I learned HTML code.
Dude, love MySpace.
What's your personal favorite social media app versus your favorite for clients?
My personal favorite is TikTok, and for clients, it depends on who the client is and what their goals are.
Very
True.
good answer.
I like that. All right, any platform, what is your favorite feature?
I love the Instagram story feature where you can add a link to the stories.
Is it true that social media managers are chronically online, and are you?
Yes and yes.
She is.
All right, and last rapid fire question for you. What is your biggest controversial take in pertaining to social media?
I have two. The first is no QR codes on a social media post. And my second is stop putting links in Instagram captions. They're not clickable.
Agreed.
So what services do you as our social media manager offer at Anderson?
So to start off, I am Meta certified community manager and GA4 certified. So that is really important to have those certifications. So that proves that we are knowledgeable, we understand whatever we're doing. And for the Meta certified community manager, that entails that I am a strategist. I am able to build communities with followers and create engaging content for our brand's audiences.
There it is.
That was a lot of words.
That was a mouthful. All right. So any other services besides Meta and GA?
Yeah, we offer a wide range of services. So to start off, we all do all of the content creation. So that includes content calendars, which that entails organic and paid social media, as well as copywriting and design. We also handle all of the reporting. So that can be either monthly, quarterly, or annually. And we also handle all the scheduling as well to make sure that all of the content goes out on time on the right platforms. And then some other services that we provide too is sourcing user-generated content. And we also help out with research and social listening.
Awesome.
And for reporting specifically, what platforms do you use and how do you pull reporting, and kind of like why is it important? Because I feel like that is a lost thing that people they don't think about with like social media management and stuff like that.
So right now I use a social scheduling platform called Sprout Social, and that's where I pull all of the reporting. So it's important to not only know how to do the reporting, not only be able to pull the impressions and the engagement and the followers, but then also be able to tell a story with that data. So that's what we do here at Anderson is we can storytell with our data. And it's really important for social media managers to understand how to optimize and what their story is saying with the data. And that helps social media managers look at the goals that we set with our clients and understand whether or not we're meeting those goals, what we need to optimize, and how we can experiment with their content.
That was a
Nice.
great answer. Okay. So kind of going back a little bit. So how did you get this role? And I kind of wanted to ask like your journey into it. So let's start with where did you go to college and what did you study and all of that stuff?
Yeah, so I started off at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University. I started off with an emphasis in journalism, and I also studied political science as well as marketing. So I started off with that. After about a year in, I weighed the pros and cons of being a journalist. I wanted to be the next Christine Amanpour, and I wanted to report on breaking news around the world. But after weighing the pros and cons, I realized it wasn't for me. And so then by sophomore year, I looked into public relations and decided to emphasize my degree in PR.
So when you ended up in PR, did you know that that was kind of going to lead you to social media?
Not at all.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I started off in PR, did a couple internships that were specifically for public relations, but all of them had a little bit of social media combined in it.
So how has your PR background helped you with social media? Like what are some characteristics and things you took that have really helped you lead into this role?
My PR background really helped me hone in on my writing skills. With public relations compared to journalism, you're more writing stories and not adding the fluff and just very dry. But with public relations, you are using the brand's voice and tone. So that really helped me as a writer for writing social media content.
No, that is such a good point you make, because in PR, right, you're writing about like the client itself, and the same thing as social media, you are the client, right? So that is, but it's just probably a little bit more fun in social media, right? It can be a little bit more creative.
Oh, yeah.
So then how did you end up in an advertising agency versus in-house? Because I know you said you did a lot of internships. How'd you get here?
So I did 5 internships in college. 2 of them were at agencies and the other 3 were in-house. So I kind of, before I graduated, I got to explore the differences between working in-house and at an agency. And then my first 3 jobs out of college were all in-house. And then I realized that I would love to go back to agency life because I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And for someone who doesn't know, could you describe like briefly the difference between being in-house versus working for like an agency with clients and everything?
Definitely. I think the best way to describe it is think of like a large corporation. Typically, they have a marketing team. And within that marketing team, there are typically subject matter experts. They can be like social media or creative, but then they're also doing other marketing roles. All in one. So that's what I really love about being back at an agency where I'm only doing social media marketing.
Right. And you have like more clients and stuff like that as well, right?
Yes. And so that's another thing too about in-house versus agency. In-house, you're only doing work for just that brand. And so it does get a little repetitive. And that's what I love about agency life is that it is so diverse with the clients. And then one day I can be working on cancer patient stories for one of our clients, Gateway for Cancer Research. Or the next day I could be shooting some really fun reels for Anderson to like really highlight our culture here.
Love filming reels.
Me too.
So fun.
So we know that being in-house versus being with an agency is very different. So could you kind of explain the similarities to how you plan content and schedule? Or maybe there aren't similarities, maybe it's more different. But can you kind of explain your process and stuff?
Yeah, the process for the most part for the job itself is very similar. But I have to say, hands down, Anderson is the most organized job company that I've ever had.
That's awesome.
Between our processes and how we communicate is so different than my previous experience in-house. Starting off with a QA process, we have a very good QA process where I write the copy and then we send it to our copywriter just to look it over. And then we send it over to the creative team to look it over as well before it even gets to the client. And there were times when I was working in-house where sometimes no one would look at the content at all and I would just post.
Right. I know it can be.
That is insane.
Social media, right, can be kind of like a scarce thing where, you know, maybe you don't have enough people and like just in-house and stuff. So I think that's one thing we really pride ourselves here at Anderson is our QA process. We are very diligent because, you know, like you said, you're working on many different clients, you know, so it's really important to have that as well.
Definitely. And then another similarity is that sometimes I have built content calendars out monthly. But for instance, there was one job where I had 20 different social media accounts in total. So it was not easy to create 20 content calendars for a month in advance. So then I would just post that day. So that's one thing that I do love about working at Anderson is that we are very organized and we are very cyclical with our processes and we have it down perfectly.
Yeah, I agree.
True.
I have.
All right, Sam, can you give us a description of what your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah. So my day-to-day throughout the month can be very different, but it is the same every month. So my role is very cyclical. In the beginning of the month, I am always working on reporting. I am starting the content calendars. And then by the middle of the month, I'm writing copy for the content calendars. Then at the end, I am starting to schedule out the content throughout the month. And then I'm also collaborating with the creative team to kick off the image and the video requests. So it's all the same, but it's very different each month.
So what is something that you do in your job as a social media manager that you don't think that people outside of the marketing world would know that you do?
I don't think people understand all of the planning and strategy and the execution that goes into being a social media manager, and especially all the reporting too. I know that a lot of influencers look at their reporting and their analytics, but they don't really know how to analyze them and kind of understand the data and what's working, what's not working. And then the last thing too is also social listening. I feel like that's a huge tactic that we use that not a lot of people understand what it is or why we do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned it earlier. I wasn't 100% sure about what social listening actually is. So could you explain that for your listeners who might be like me and are unaware of that?
Of course. I think social listening is so important for every social media manager to do. I am chronically online, not just for my personal preferences, but also to listen in on conversations that our brands or their followers are having. It's really important to know what conversations are going on, not just on one social media platform, but all of them.
Yeah.
Like for instance, during the Black Lives Matter movement, everyone was talking about that online across all social media platforms. And a lot of companies got a lot of heat for either not talking about it or talking about it. And I noticed, because I had to do a lot of social listening during that time for the company I was working for. And a lot of the companies that were getting less heat were not promoting their products. So it's just understanding of when to post and when not to post. And there's another instance too where it's a good time to post. So it's also knowing what trends are happening. So another example of social listening is when the Barbie templates were going crazy on the internet. So it had the movie poster from Barbie, and instead of like having the actors or the actresses, it was everyday people. And so we thought it would be hilarious to use our team in the Barbie templates. And so like this Barbie is a chaos coordinator, or this Barbie is a creative genius. And that post actually ended up being our top performing post for the entire year. So social listening, it's really good for not only knowing what's going on in the world, but then also trying to find opportunities for trends that your brand could go on, because you never know how well it might perform for your brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
I have a question just out of curiosity. So will some trends only be trending on like one platform? Like per se, like could one trend only be on like Instagram and not really like on Facebook kind of thing? Does that happen?
I love that question. So before, like, I would say a couple years ago when I first started my career, it would typically only be about like one platform, and then maybe it would spill onto another. But for the most part, nowadays, everything is all intertwined.
Love that.
But it does take a while. So for example, I could be scrolling through TikTok and I find a really funny video and I could show it to my fiance. And then a couple weeks later, he would show me that exact same video. I'm like, I just showed you that video 2 weeks ago.
So like Instagram Reels, right?
Yeah. So it's like the trends do intertwine between the platforms, but sometimes it takes a couple weeks or even a couple days.
That's so interesting. Okay, so like you said earlier, with influencers, they know, their stats and reporting to some respect. But do you think that they should become Meta NGA4 certified so that they can also tell the story? I know at Anderson, like you said, we're super big on reporting, telling story with data. So yeah, do you think that they should?
Definitely. I think it's super important for even influencers to be certified. It's so easy and available to anybody to be certified for on Meta or J4. And there's also some social scheduling platforms, like we use Sprout Social, and you can be certified on Sprout Social. So the more you know, the more knowledge you have, the better. But especially for the Meta certification, for the one that I have is the community manager, especially for an influencer, I think that would be great if they did that, because it's all about building your community and understanding how to talk to your community and build connections.
And I guess this goes without saying, but I guess every social media manager out there should be Meta NGA4 certified.
Oh, yes. Yeah. The more certifications,
that's something to look out for if you're hiring or if you're interested in working with someone.
Well, on the topic of influencers, good or bad for social media, good or bad for business, what is your opinion on influencers?
I love influencers, and I think they're so great, because think about just 20 years ago, all of the big advertisements that you would see for brands were just all celebrities. But now there can be an influencer that maybe has less than 1 million followers that are collaborating with big brands that everybody knows about. And I think that's amazing to give that power to like everyday people.
And can you briefly describe the different types of influencers? I know there's like I think micro, you said, and then just like general influencers. So can you kind of give us a little description?
There's so much popularity with influencers. There are now 4 categories of influencers.
Please educate us.
Yes. So there's a mega, a macro, a micro, and a nano influencer. So each of those categories ranges anywhere from 1,000 to over 1 million followers.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Wow. I didn't know that. It's expanding. The
is.
industry
They
is
were
expanding.
like, we need a name for everyone.
Yeah.
Every
Everyone
influencer deserves a name.
Well, it's, people are using them and utilizing them. So it's like,
Yeah.
when we do our media strategies and stuff, it's like, we look at budgets for social media and whatnot. It's like, can we afford this type of influencer? So now there's 4 different types that we can look at. So that's kind of
4
great.
different tiers.
4 different tiers. Yes,
crazy.
exactly.
So have you ever worked with an influencer before?
I have worked with influencers before. And I think anyone who is looking to work with influencers and include them in marketing campaigns, I think my biggest advice would be to not only look at those influencers and just look at their followers, because I know that's what most people think to do, is like who has the biggest following, but that's not necessarily always the best person to promote your products. I think you have to look at the influencer and see what their brand is, whether they're like a mobby blogger or they're a foodie, or there's so many different types of influencers. And also when another aspect to look at other than following is to look at their engagement rate, because someone could have over 1 million followers, but their engagement rate could only be 1%.
Yeah.
And 1%
Not very
engagement,
trustworthy.
not very good. That means their followers are not engaging with their content.
Yeah.
So there could be maybe a nano or a micro influencer that maybe only has between 1,000 to 5,000 followers, but their engagement rate could be 3 to 5%, which is either average or great. So always look at the engagement rate.
That's awesome.
Great tips.
Interesting.
So Sam, what do you like the most about working at an advertising agency?
My favorite part about working in an advertising agency is the collaboration and the camaraderie that we have, especially with our work culture here at Anderson. And I like being able to collaborate with the creative team if they've seen any fun reels online that maybe they have an idea that maybe we should try out. And I also love that any idea is welcome. So last year we went to leadership and we asked them if we can start a podcast, and which is just insane. And here we are.
Here we are.
Check out my microphone.
So as you know, we have a very diverse set of clients in different industries. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you develop the strategy and develop the understanding the voice and tone and how that process is?
Of course. So it all kind of starts out with our client intake meetings. Those are so important for us to understand the brand's goals, kind of understand their history and who they are as a client, and then also learn their brand's voice and tone. I think that's so important to be able to create content for them, not just the copy, but also the design, and then everything can come together.
Yeah. And as you know, the social media, as you were saying, their social media is kind of like their persona. And I think in those client intake meetings, that's kind of where we get to see that persona and who they are. And we ask them the questions of if you were a person, who would you be? So, you get to see on their social media, and Sam does a great job of this. It's who they are and what they stand for just by looking at the first 6 pictures of their Instagram page, which I think is very challenging. And so kudos to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I just think going back to a question that we went over earlier is just that people don't realize that how much actually goes into creating this content. The client intake meetings can be long, and all the research and all the question, everything that comes with it, it's just so much more to social media management than people realize.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of the times everyone has a social media account. So everyone just expects to think, oh, social media is easy. I post all the time. I can totally do this.
Yeah,
but
Pepper posts all the time.
Pepper posts all the time. But it's so different to post for a brand.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Especially when you're trying to drive conversions or you're trying to
whatever that goal
a target
is.
goal, right? It's for our own social media accounts, we just post a picture and we hope that people like them and we want to get enough likes.
True.
Yeah. But for our clients, that's not the case. They want to meet their goals and, whether that's conversions, likes, donations, whatnot.
Exactly.
That's what they want us to do. So it's a bit different.
It's so true.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for any recent graduates or really anyone starting out their career in social media?
My first advice is to be chronically online. I'm half kidding. It is very important to always be on social media. I mean, that is your job, is to be on social media. So it's really important to understand the nuances of each platform, what people are posting, what's trending, what's going on. And then especially social media within each specific brand's industry too.
Yeah.
But my other big piece of advice is to hone in on your writing skills, because writing for each brand voice is so different. So writing for healthcare industry is going to be so different than writing for a retail brand.
Yeah.
Early on in your career, what tools or resources did you use to help hone in on those skills?
In my very first job out of college, the one that I was interning at that turned into a full-time position, my manager at the time was a mentor to me. She taught me pretty much everything that I need to know about social media marketing and reporting. And from there, she also gave me some really good resources. She told me about the blogs from Buffer. They're also another social scheduling platform. And they not only have really great blogs that are educational, that are very elementary, like one-on-one if you're just starting off, but they also have podcasts too, which is really fun.
Oh, wow.
We help with those.
Yeah.
All right. And then our very last question. If there's one thing that you would have liked for our audience to take away from this episode, what would that be?
So my number one takeaway is to be social, because it's in the name. Social media is about being social. It's a very important puzzle piece in your overall marketing plan. Social media is a very powerful tool, and brands are now have the capability to reach like new audiences that they weren't able to even just a couple of years ago. So I think it's really important to just try it out for your brand, incorporate it into your marketing plan, build a really great social media strategy, which we make awesome social media strategies, and just have fun with it. Social media is all about having fun and just building connections and just getting to know your followers that can someday in turn become customers.
So like Sam said, if you're interested in building your social media following, you can always reach out to us here at Anderson, and we could help you with those strategy and goals for your social media.
So speaking of that, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Well, thank you so much, Sam, for being our guest today / host.
Yep.
We really appreciate you coming on and telling us more about your role and giving our viewers a little bit more insight into what it means to be a social media manager here at Anderson.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, that was a great ad break. I guess we should get back to work.
I guess so.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.